Of Sussex Sport Weekly. I'm Matt Pole, and this week I'm joined by Brighton and Hove Albion writers Derren Howard and Frankie Elliott and Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford. Brighton reached the FA Cup quarter-finals for the first time since the 2018-19 season with a 1-0 win at Stoke City on Tuesday. Evan Ferguson's first half strike set up a home meeting with this season's FA Cup giant killers Grimsby Town in the last day. We'll assess Brighton's chances of lifting the famous old trophy and look ahead to Saturday's home clash with struggling West Ham United. Meanwhile, it was another weekend to forget for Crawley Town. They were thumped 5-2 at home on Saturday by high-flying Carlisle United before falling to an agonising 1-0 defeat at Tranmere. Dom Telford missed an 80th minute penalty at the Wirral, which means the Reds remain mired in relegation trouble. They visit promotion-chasing Northampton and near neighbours Sutton United this week as they look to escape the drop. But first, we'll start with Brighton and their victory at the Bet365 Stadium. Albion fans must be delighted that their players can indeed do it on a cold Tuesday night in Stoke. They may not have hit the heights of their FA Cup win against Liverpool, Derren, but it always looked as if they were in some kind of control.
Yeah, it did seem that way. 1-0 is always a fairly nervy result. Just takes one little, flick or set piece, which, Stoke did put them under pressure at the end. But yeah, it's a great result. And on the whole, a decent performance as well against, a team who were very competitive on the day. But it was a win, and there was game time for players who needed it as well. So it couldn't have gone any better for Brighton in that respect. But as I say, Stoke, they did well. They really pressed well, especially for the first half, and it was very competitive. They really trying to stop that ball from the back into Caicedo into midfield where they start the attack. And yeah, Caicedo took a few hefty blows during the match. He got clattered into a few times, but Brighton found a way around really. And the goal came actually when they bypassed the press from midfield, and he picked out Matoma with a lovely ball from the back, Lewis Dunk. And then Matoma laid it on a plate for Ferguson to tap in. So it was a real movement of quality, and that was the difference in the end. So great stuff from Albion, and it was a great reward for the sort of more than 2,000 Seagulls fans who, as you say, travelled up on a cold Tuesday night to Stoke. So, and yeah, I did a piece for the website this morning as well, and Brighton are now third favourites to lift the trophy behind Man United and Manchester City. So, not getting too far ahead, but yeah, exciting times.
Speaking of hardy souls who made that arduous trek up to Stoke midweek, Frankie, you're at the game for us. As Derren mentioned there, Roberto De Zerbi gave run out to what you could probably call fringe players in the likes of Jan-Paul van Hecken, Jeremy Sarmiento, and also handed a full Brighton debut to Facundo Buonanotte. How did Brighton and those players in particular equip themselves, do you think, on Tuesday night?
I have to say, I think that's probably what he'll be most pleased with. 5 changes from the defeat to Fulham. Jason Steele coming in goal as well, who's their cup goalkeeper. And I have to say, I think they're all their standout players. I know Caicedo won man of the match, and he did put in another great display. But Van Heck at the back was very, very impressive. Not only in his defensive work, I mean, a number of good tackles and headers, but his distribution, which, as we know, is very, very important to Zerbi, was excellent, both in long range and short range. He was very, very calm on the ball. Stoke pressed high as well. This wasn't a defender that was given a lot of time on the ball. They were pressing him high away from home, and he looked very, very comfortable under that. As for Sarmiento as well, coming in, still only 20 years old, looked very, very sharp, and probably the most dangerous out of the forward players. And as I said with Jason Steele, this wasn't just a keeper being brought in for rotation. De Zerbi rates this keeper very highly. And again, not only was he looking comfortable under pressure from crosses and shots, he was very, very good with his feet. And so the Brighton way of playing football in the Premier League that we see all the time is also very capable with the squad players as well, which will be very, very important to Zerbi going forward. That not only can he rely on a starting 11 to play the De Zerbiism football, he's got people coming in from the bench and those fringe players, as you say, that can also play it effectively in difficult games, in difficult circumstances.
Yeah, well, Albion now welcome Grimsby Town, who are the lowest ranked team left in the competition. I think it's on the weekend of the March 18th and 19th. Brighton aside, only City, United and Fulham are left of the Premier League teams in the competition, and we're going to lose one of them as United have been drawn against Fulham. We all know that Grimsby are more than capable of an upset. I know that Southampton are a bit beleaguered at the moment. but you can't write them off. But at the same time, Derren, you'd really have to fancy Brighton's chances of reaching Wembley and making the semi-finals at this stage, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's a great draw. There's no getting away from it. But I do think, though, the Brighton will be very cautious indeed, not to take it for granted. Southampton, you could say, they had other priorities this season, but fair play to Grimsby. They went there and, did a job on a Premier League team and, thoroughly deserved to go through. But without doubt, it's a fantastic chance for Brighton. But they can't be thinking of Wembley just yet. They've still got to get through this, and I'm sure De Zerbi won't allow them to get complacent. It could be a tricky tie, but you'd certainly take that draw when you consider Man City, Man United, Fulham, and an informed Burnley as well, who are playing almost like a Premier League team as well at the moment. They still remain. So yeah, but just a word on the Grimsby manager, Paul Hurst, as well. Full credit to him. As an Ipswich fan, I remember he had a spell at Portman Road after Mick McCarthy left, and the club were in a bit of a shambles at the time, and he lasted just 5 months, which is the shortest reign of any manager at Ipswich. But he is a talented manager, and it was just a case of wrong time, for him at that time. But he's back at Grimsby. He achieved promotion to the National League last season from the National League, which is no easy task. And now he's steered them to the quarter-final. So, fair play to him. Fair play to him.
Realistically, Frankie, would you say Brighton have anyone to fear? I'd say City aren't quite the all-conquering team they were last season. Man United are still developing under Ten Hag, although they have won the Carabao Cup. Yeah, would you say that Brighton have got every right to believe that they can take the cup home?
They have every right to believe. Of course, they are still having to be very wary of those two teams because they are still two exceptional teams and also two teams that would need the silverware. I think as Europe has become more competitive in the last 10 years or so, I think you're seeing the top six see the FA Cup and the League Cup as a main priority now, especially for Ten Hag in his first season, also for Guardiola, who is always, as we know, hungry for trophies. But I also think that Brighton will have been helped by the fact that they reached the last 16 of the EFL Cup and had a very, very good opportunity to reach the latter stages of that competition, but got knocked out to a Championship side. So they've already faced an upset and are aware of the dangers of getting complacent. I think De Zerbi has learned an awful lot from that Charlton game going into the FA Cup run. And so the Grimsby game, I think they're going to be very, very prepared for and won't be allowed to look further than that quarterfinal game. Which was, like I say, standing good said, because you're looking at the 8 teams remaining, Brighton have a really, really, probably the best opportunity they're going to have for a long time of winning the FA Cup. That's for sure.
Grimsby have already faced Sussex opposition this season. They beat Crawley Town 3-0 at home in October in League Two. Mark Dunford, what can Brighton expect from the Mariners?
Well, it was actually that win that spelled the end of Kevin Betsy's reign at Crawley Town. So I think they're a team that clearly don't fear anyone. I mean, if you look at who they've beaten in the FA Cup this year, Plymouth, Burton, Luton, it's just, and obviously Southampton last night. So it's incredible, really. They've obviously got some good players. Gavin Houlihan, who scored both goals last night, an experienced midfielder for them. I think they're not a team of stars. They haven't got any sort of individual stars or anything. I think they're just a really good team, and they've got this far. They're a League Two, so every team in League Two, well, if you look at the results, apart from Crawley Town and maybe a couple of others, they're just a team of just battlers, all of them. And every game, Scott Lindsay will say it every week, and Kevin Betsy said it every week, and Matthew Everton said it for the 1 week he was there. That every game in League Two is tough, and I think Grimsby are sort of the epitome of that. They're going to be a tough side. It won't be a walkover. I mean, yes, Brighton should win, but it's going to be a really tough game, and it'll be really good to see. And what they have got is a really big following, and we know about the inflatable haddocks and things like that. So it's going to be a really fun day for them at the Amex. But Brighton shouldn't certainly take them for granted.
Brighton men's team aren't the only Sussex side with cup aspirations this year. Lewis women and Albion women are both in the Women's FA Cup quarterfinals. Lewis host Man United, while Brighton women make the trip to Birmingham City, while In the FA Vars, Peacehaven and Telscombe will host Wiltshire club Corsham Town the last day. We'll talk more about Peacehaven and Telscombe next week, but can the 4 clubs make it a quote-unquote Sussex Wembley triple trip in May with finalists in the men's and women's FA Cup and FA Vars, Derren?
Well, it would certainly be great if they could. So the men's team have certainly a great chance with Brighton men's team to get through. But it would be great for the women's team as well. They've struggled in the WSL this season. They haven't quite had the new manager bounce that they were hoping for after Hope Powell left. So hopefully this cup competition can really galvanise them and get them behind the new manager who's looking for, he really needs something to get his reign at the club going, and the FA Cup could be that for him, and great for Lewis women as well. They compete in the second tier. They've been doing great work in the women's game, for a number of years now, on the pitch and off the pitch, and really fair play to them. I'd love to see 3 Sussex teams at Wembley. What a story that would be for us to follow as well.
Mark, do you think Peacehaven have got it in to be this year's Littlehampton Town?
Yeah, I really hope so. It'd be a great story again, wouldn't it? Last year it was such a good day out, and I think it would be really good. Yeah, if Peacehaven get there. It's a bit of a lottery, that competition. If you get a good run, as Littlehampton proved last year, you can get to the final. But yeah, I'm certainly already booking my week at Wembley hotels just so I can be there. So save on the travelling if I can be there for every final. But it'd be good. And obviously, like Derren said, Lewis women, it'd be a great story if they could get there. I mean, they've got a huge task in facing Man United, but they're at home. I'm assuming the TV cameras will be there. There'll be a huge following them. So it'd be really good to see. Not just Brighton get there, because I do think Brighton, the men's team, will certainly have a Wembley appearance. But it'll be great if we can have at least 1 or 2 of the others getting there as well.
Of those 4 teams, Frankie, who do you think's most likely to get a Wembley final?
I would have to say Brighton, the Brighton men's team. Sorry. Like I say, I think now that we are seeing Fulham playing Manchester United, and we've also seen Tottenham leave last night, and obviously Manchester City, the only other team above them in the league, and a Grimsby quarter-final, this is like the perfect opportunity for them to reach the final, and as I say, win it, because they're playing so well. I don't want to get ahead of myself, because it is a very exciting prospect, and it could all end in the next round with egg on our face. But I don't think the way the season is set up with Brighton playing well and the draw, they'll never get a better opportunity. They really won't.
Lewis Dunk made his 400th Brighton appearance at Stoke on Tuesday. I think it takes him 10th in the list of all-time Brighton appearance makers. He's been at the club since he was under 12, and he's been part of 2 promotion-winning Seagulls sides. When Lewis Dunk eventually does hang up his boots, Derren, he must surely be regarded as one of Albion's all-time greats.
For sure. Absolutely. 400 appearances. Brilliant. He's just so consistent. And, like you say, he started his career in Brighton back in 2010 when they were in League One. He's seen it all during his time there, and it's sort of his rise as well has coincided with Brighton's rise, and they've sort of met at the one of their best players has met at one of the best time in Brighton's history, and they've risen together, which is a great story in itself. And he's now they have a shiny new stadium, training facilities, and competing at the sharp end of the Premier League, and it's totally different to the club that he would have started with. So he's had the talent and the commitment to rise, with the club, to be honest. So, what a player he's been, and you can just tell that fellow players and managers they love him as well. De Zerbi said this week that he's one of the best in the Premier League and could easily play Champions League football. But it's just still a bit baffling as to why he's only had the 1 England cap. But as far as Brighton concerned, one of the best, absolutely.
Yeah, as Derren mentioned there, Frankie, Roberto De Zerbi in his pre-Stoke press conference said that he was baffled that none of the so-called bigger teams in the Premier League have ever been linked with Lewis Dunk. I think the only time that I can remember Dunk being linked away was when Leicester were looking for a replacement for Harry Maguire when he left to join Man United. And as Derren mentioned, he's also won England cap. Why do you think Lewis Dunk has never received the recognition and respect he deserves outside of the Amex?
Well, I think the main issue is the tag of being a Brighton local boy and playing for the same club his whole career has meant he's never been associated with quality. He's not come in from an amazing academy or from abroad, so he's been tagged with being the classic English centre back, which is someone that's good at heading, someone that's strong in the tackle, but not particularly great on the ball. And then also playing in a side that's only featured in the top 10 once in the 5 years they've been in the Prem, means he's just been associated with a sort of tag that someone like Ben Mee might have, which is like a brilliant centre back to have if you're fighting relegation, but not someone that would be brilliant if you're looking to expand as a football club into challenging for Europe. I think the major thing that's helped his career massively, obviously Graham Potter has been a big success, but De Zerbi this year it will have elevated Dunk's game massively because of the importance of centre-backs are to his way of playing attacking football. Their ability to pass out from the back is essential to his game, and that has meant that Dunk has had a lot more responsibility on the ball. So no longer is he being associated with, like I say, the classic English centre-back. He is now showing his qualities as a centre-back that can play in Europe, which is that ability to do both the defensive side and the offensive side, and he's done it brilliantly because since De Zerbi's come in, he's been one of Brighton's best players in both of those situations, in both defence and attack, as we saw on Tuesday, because his pass led to the goal. It was a brilliant pass, and before that they were struggling.
Derren, Frankie mentioned there that there's this kind of perception about Brighton not being probably seen as the most fashionable team in the world, hence players don't really get that recognition. Do you think players like Alexis McAllister and Kaoru Mitoma are changing that perception?
Yeah, I do. I think it's definitely slowly changing, and the fact that they're competing now in the top half of the table for the last 2 seasons will help change that as well. With McAllister as well, you've got a World Cup winner there, and it's using players well in the team that with Graham Potter started the progression, and as Frankie said there, De Zerbi's taken it on an extra level, and if you've got the talent to go with that, which Lewis Dunk clearly has, then you are going to start to get that recognition. Maybe it's just come a little bit too late in his career in terms of England or in terms of a move to a top 4 club, but when you look at some of the centre backs at the top of the Premier League and you see what Lewis Dunk consistently does week in, week out, I don't think Albion fans wouldn't pick too many players ahead of Lewis Dunk. They love him, and it's he's been brilliant for them.
Looking ahead to this Saturday, Frankie, Brighton welcome a West Ham side who have, I think, surprised some people somewhat and have not really kicked on this season. They're 16th in the league and they've only won once away from home in the Premier League all season. Brighton must be viewing this game as a good chance to get back on track in the Premier League after the huge disappointment of their defeat against Fulham.
Yeah, this is a very important game, I feel, for Brighton in regards to how they finish the season, because on paper this is a game they should be winning. West Ham have been struggling all season, are 16th in the league, and Brighton are currently challenging for Europe. However, as we saw against Nottingham Forest, West Ham still do have that quality. Okay, it's not been on show on this season, but there are still some top level players there, and players like Declan Rice and Jarrod Bowen. What this could easily be is the game that Brighton lose, because they are not at the races, and if they're not at the races, West Ham do have the quality to win, and that turns into now 1 win in 4 games, which is not the form they need against the teams that like Liverpool that are now picking up results. So yeah, it's a very, really important game, because it's the defining thing about, are they ready to challenge in these big games now? Because every game from now until May will be a huge chance to pick up points and move up the league. A loss would be massively damaging for not only their chance of Europe, but also their recent form as well, with the lack of goals that they've scored in the last 3 games. So yeah, very, very big weekend in regards to setting up how Brighton are for the next couple of months.
Changing gears, Crawley Town, Mark, on Saturday suffered a very, very heavy defeat at Carlisle, 5-2, 4-0 down at half-time. Losing to teams that are chasing promotion aren't going to define Crawley's season, I think, but I think the manner of the loss must surely hurt supporters, because it just looked like in the first half they quite simply didn't turn up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And from by all accounts, there were a lot of fans that walked out at half time as well. I mean, they did fight back second half, but that's been Crawley's problem so far under Scott Lindsay, is that they perform in one half of a game. They'll be 0-0 at half time in lots of games and then letting a goal straight after thing. But it was the first half this week, and by all accounts, it was just awful. And it was silly. It was mistakes, defensive mistakes. The keeper, Ryan Schofield, who's come in from Huddersfield Town, he hasn't performed yet. And I think Corey Adai came straight back into the side on Tuesday night. So there's, still a lot of work to be done. But like you say, I think it's in the last few weeks, since Scott Lindsay's taken over, they've had to play Leyton Orient, Carlisle, Stockport, Salford, who they actually did beat. And then they've got Sutton United this Tuesday, Northampton, who are fourth. So they've had a really tough run of it in regards to the teams they're playing against, but it is the performances that are really worrying fans, I think, because they just can't see where that next 3 points is coming from.
Yeah, you speak about performances there, and Crawley were much, much better at Tranmere on Tuesday night. But unfortunately for Dom Telford, he missed that penalty with 10 minutes to go, and Crawley ended up seeing a valuable point taken away from them. Telford was brought to Sussex amid great fanfare. He was League Two's top scorer last season at Newport with 25 goals, and he was in the PFA Team of the Year and the League Two Team of the Year. I think Dom Telford will probably be the first to admit that he hasn't quite hit the same heights at Crawley, but viewing the miss on Twitter, the amount of abuse he received from Crawley fans was bordering on vitriolic. Where has it gone wrong for Dom Telford this season, and why have the Crawley fans suddenly decided that he's the scapegoat and the reason why everything is going wrong?
To answer that last bit, is because Crawley fans need a scapegoat every time. First of all, it was Kevin Betsy, then it was Chris Galley, the director of football. Now it's because of the penalty miss. I mean, the best players in the world miss penalties, so you can't blame Dom Telford for that. But they do. But yeah, like you said, he will admit himself, and he has admitted that it hasn't gone how he wanted it this year. He hasn't scored the goals he has. But I think one of the main reasons is probably the formation. There's many games I've been to where he has been up front on his own, and I just don't think he's an up front on his own kind of striker. Last year, his success, he formed a great partnership with Courtney Baker-Richardson at Newport. And that was when he did come, like you said, again, there was a massive fanfare. I remember I think the club's official account said something like, "This is big," kind of thing when they announced it, and everybody got excited. But there were a few Crawley fans who were skeptical and said he has only had one season where he scored more than 10 goals. And he's been around for a while now. He's played for Plymouth and teams like that, where he didn't quite score a lot of goals. He's had that one really good season. And was it because of the partnership with Courtney Baker-Richardson? It might just be that. And what Crawley haven't had, and I think the last person, and I'm sure we've joked about this before, Matt, is Thomas Verhate, the big Dutch striker. I think he was the last striker they had who was a big, like 6'2", 6'4",
big lad.
Big lad. But he didn't. That was under Harry Kewell, I think. That was when he arrived. And Crawley have never had that. And if you stuck someone of that sort of ilk next to Tom Telford, like not play a 4-4-2 as such, but have the two men up front and Telford making those runs off him, I think it would make a huge difference. But obviously they didn't get that. I know in the January transfer window on deadline day, they were trying to get someone in of that ilk, but they just couldn't because everybody wants that kind of player, don't they? A big striker that's going to batter defences and open space for other players. But I mean, Telford, he has got quality. I mean, if you look at the goal he scored against Burnley in the League Cup when they lost 3-1, it was a big hoof downfield. I think it was Ellery Balcom in goal that day. Smashed it downfield. His first touch was impeccable and the finish was great. And we have had glimpses of that this season, but just not enough. And he'll admit himself that it hasn't quite worked out this year. But I think he is a confidence player, and if he'd stuck that penalty away on Saturday, Crawley might have gone on Tuesday. Crawley might have gone on to win that game. And I know, but you say the penalty miss. There was, I think it was Ashton Addison and Tom Fellows both had one-on-ones. So yeah, but Crawley fans, I mean, it's only a minority of Crawley fans. They need a scapegoat. And it's Dom Telford is the flavour of the month for them at the moment. So hopefully they can come back this week and get that goal. I mean, he's got double figures, so which is not a bad return.
Well, yeah, you speak about this week. Reds are on the road twice this week. They visit Northampton, who were held by Crawley's relegation rivals Harrogate in midweek, and then they've got a localish derby against Sutton on Tuesday. How do you see these games going, Mark? The Cobblers will obviously want to bounce back after their midweek disappointment, but local games, I suppose, are always very, very difficult to call.
They are, and Crawley have actually got a really good record at Northampton. I'm not going to be able to give you the statistics on that. But they have got some good results at Northampton in the past. But Northampton are fourth, they're promotion chasing. If they had won on Tuesday night, they might have gone into this a little bit more complacent, but they drew, they'll want to hit back. And Crawley on the road, they haven't won away from home this year. So, I mean, Crawley will be fighting. And if they can put in what they did on Tuesday night, then hopefully they can pick something up. But again, it's one of those things. I don't want to be too negative, but I think a point is the best they can hope for at Northampton. But Sutton, more of a local derby, half an hour up the road. It's again, they're having a decent run, but I think Crawley's got a better chance of Sutton than they have at Northampton. The old manager used to be at Crawley under Dermot Drummy, Matt Gray, is at Sutton as well. And last year, Crawley had a couple of really good games against Sutton. So it'll be a really good game and the atmosphere will be rocking. And I think there'll be a big away support getting behind Crawley as always. So hopefully they can pick up. If they can pick up at least 2 points, maybe 4 from these 2 games, that'll set them in good stead for what is an incredible March where they've got 4 home games, I think, against teams all around them. So they've got to start picking up points, and hopefully one of these 2 games will be the sort of catalyst to a good end of March for them.
We'll go into score predictions now. As mentioned earlier, Brighton at home to West Ham United. How do you see that one going, Derren?
Yeah, I think West Ham are hard to, their results haven't been as great this season, but they've showed signs of improvement of late. I think they're going to be tough to break down. And as Brighton have seen, against Bournemouth, they struggled to break them down until the last minute. Fulham, they struck. I think maybe a 1-1 or, I'd love to say they get a point, a win, but I think it's going to be a tough 1-1.
Frankie, how do you see that one going as well?
Yeah, I'm with Derren. I think it'd be interesting to see if Estupiñán is back and Solly March. I think those are 2 key players that will help break down West Ham, who I'm sure are going to be tough to beat. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be 1-0 Brighton. I'm going to go positive, hoping those players are back. But yeah, it'll be a tough game, very tough game.
What are you going for, Mark?
I agree. It's going to be tough, but they've got quite a good record against West Ham, haven't they, Brian? So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I'm going to be positive as well.
Yeah, I think it might be a tight game. I think I'm going to go for a 1-1 here. I think the West Ham game might prove to be more tricky than people are making it out. But yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. And the 2 Crawley games, Mark, Northampton away and Sutton away. What are you going for?
I think Northampton might be a bit too much for them. I think they're going to. I think it might be. It won't be. It'll be like Tranmere. I think Crawley will play well, but they just won't be able to get that killer goal, and I think it will be 1 or 2-0 to Northampton.
Derren, what are you going for, Crawley? 6-point week, or are they going to be empty-handed?
It's their away record. It's just, it doesn't give you any confidence, does it? You just want them to just get something so that they can get a springboard to get going. But I can't see them getting anything at Northampton, to be honest. I think a defeat at Northampton and then maybe a point in the next one.
How do you see it going this week for Crawley, Frankie?
Again, the away record thing is disastrous. I also have one of my best friends who is listening to this, I'm sure, is a Northampton fan and season ticket holder. So I've got to say a Northampton win in that one. I'm not looking particularly confident for Crawley over the next week, I have to say.
I realise I didn't do the Sutton one. I think they'll get a point at Sutton. I think it could be a 2-2 draw, local derby and all that. Lots of fun. There'll definitely be a red card in that game, I reckon. So there you go. That's my big prediction. And obviously we can see all the results and reaction and that on sussexworld.co.uk/sport, which is up at the bottom of the screen at the moment. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yes, you've done my job for me there by plugging the website. Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, thank you very much this week, chaps. As ever, brilliant chatting. As Mark said, for the latest news, views, and sports reports, visit sussexwell.co.uk/sport, and we'll see you all next week.